Good evening, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us on the Tunnel Pod UK. This is another championship chat, and I'm delighted to say we've got a couple more guests with us this week. I have the pleasure of being joined by Chad, who is from the Red Heart of Sheffield podcast, obviously Sheffield United fan. And I've also got Vic with us, who's from the Rams Talk podcast. First and foremost, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Championship is obviously well and truly up and running. We've got a couple of games to discuss. So, I'm just going to get stuck straight into it, guys. I'll come to you first, Chad. We've also had a little bit of a chat before the show. So, start of the season. We're obviously 2 games in. Sheffield United have kicked things off with a 2-0 victory over Preston away on the opening day. And then yesterday, those looking in maybe is seen as a disappointing draw against QPR 2-2 at home. What's your take on your first 2 games of the season?
I would say if I had to sum it up, Preston are probably surprisingly one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, that team you can see by Ryan Lowe being sacked after the first game of the season. So really nothing to draw off of that. Preston never really laid a glove on us. I don't really think we got out of second gear. Yesterday, first half kind of looked like the entirety of the Preston game. But when you have a bang average side, you will get a result like yesterday. When you only have 11 players, and then you go to make the subs and you look at the bench and you have Rhian Brewster and you're like, that's the best we've got. You bring up City Peck, who barely has facial hair. He's about 19 years old. Just was playing in the youth team last season. Louis Marsh the same way. So you look at the bench and you'll see why Sheffield United conceded 2 in the second half. And for all intents and purposes, like I said at the beginning of the season, we're going to be a bang average side. We're going to finish 9th to 12th. And yesterday was a clear example of it. I don't think we're going to. Everybody's like, oh my God, Sheffield United is the greatest team in the championship. No, you're a bang average side, an overrated bang average manager. You're going to finish bang average in the championship. I don't know what to tell you. Unless you bring 7 or 8 players through the door between now and the end of the window to add depth to this squad, you're going to finish 9th to 12th. We had 18, as we talked a little bit earlier, we had 18 players go out, 18 or 19, and we've brought 8 or 9 in. So right there, you're already short about 10 players, and you're coming from the academy, bringing the players into the bench, and a few players are going to get, starting time in this season. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I wasn't really surprised about it. Yes, everybody in Sheff United world was oh my God, we beat Preston and that was deserved, and then we beat Disney FC. Oh my God, we're gonna 180 points coming, no 46-0-0. We're gonna not drop. We're not gonna concede a single goal. And then yesterday, a little bit of realism. Hello, wake up, realism.
Well, it's interesting saying. Obviously, I was saying it to you beforehand because I'd like to see kind of what Vic thinks in a second. Is that I'm a West Brom fan, and as you know, obviously as another fan looking in, I thought Sheffield United have probably had the best transfer window in the Championship. You look at some of the guys you've brought in. From the outside looking in, I've been really jealous of some of the signings you've made, the likes of Callum O'Hare you brought in, Harrison Burrows from Peterborough, Kiefer Moore, who I think's a good, striker at this level. And then again, some of the guys I forgot you'd brought in, Tyrese Campbell, who was obviously released from Stoke. And then the one most recently was obviously the youngster from Crystal Palace, who, who's getting talked up a lot as really exciting prospect. Raksaki, who I believe you paid quite a substantial loan fee for. It's quite surprising to see. So you think it's more a case of numbers than quality? You just need, you've lost. Obviously, you're saying you've lost a lot of players in the close season. In the summer, even though you've made some good signings, at this moment in time, you don't think it's going to be enough for you to be contending.
Yeah, I mean, as you named all those players, Raksaki, Harrison Burroughs, Callum O'Hare, Kiefer Moore, even Harry Suter coming through the door from Leicester. As soon as I'm knocking on wood right now because I don't want it to happen, but as soon as one or two of those players drop, the quality in those said positions just drops massively. And so if they're able to have all 11 starting players not go down with any sort of injury, that would be great. But let's be honest, it's a long, arduous season. 46 games is a long time. We're going to have injuries. And if we're out without some of these players for, 4, 6, 8 weeks, you're really going to see it slip if we don't bring in depth, because the simple fact of the youth that we have on the bench, they're inexperienced. They haven't played in the championship. A few of them have played in the National League, League Two. It's just, I think it's a little bit of a false hope. And if we do get this quote unquote takeover through the door, I don't think it's going to happen before the window closes. I still think we need 6 or 7 players, just not top-notch quality championship players. We need more players that are going to be, depth. And if that drop-off happens where the quality players take a hit, it's not quite as far fall off as an academy player, if that makes sense. But I don't know. It's a long season. I could be talking out of my backside right now. We could go finish second, automatic promotion. It would shock me, but I'm the eternal pessimist. So, that's why I'm coming off a bit negative.
No, it's interesting to hear because, like I said, I support West Brom, and I think we're in a similar situation in that I think we've got a good starting 11. On paper, who could probably compete with most teams in the division, give them a good game. But we in terms of squad depth, we're really lacking as well. We need to do some more business before the transfer window slams shut. But like I said, it's interesting to hear that because I again, looking in, I thought Sheffield United were in a much healthier position in terms of squad. Interesting. I'll come on to yourself, Vic, then. So Derby, obviously, back in the Championship. Personally, I like to see it. I've a bit of a soft spot for Derby. I've got a good fan base, a big club. And you've had quite an interesting start to life back in the Championship. Obviously, your first game was that 4-2 defeat to Blackburn Rovers away, which I watched the game. And it was a very entertaining game. I thought you give a good account of yourselves, but tailed off a little bit at the end. And then the win yesterday against Middlesbrough, there wasn't many people who saw that coming. What do you make of your start, mate?
Yeah, I think if we talk about the Blackburn game, I think it was very much a welcome to the Championship sort of moment. I think we've been used to League One for 2 years and the sort of style of football in that division. And I think with Blackburn, I think it was a case of we had a lot of first day nerves. I think the squad, again, had a lot of chopping and changing. We've got a lot of new faces in the door. I just think we looked nervous on the day. Of course, we scored set pieces, which we're probably the kings of, and you'll probably see that this season that our set pieces are probably one of the best in the division. It certainly was in League One, but defensively, I think we were all over the shop. I think we just got everything wrong on the against Blackburn. And then when it fast forwarded to Middlesbrough yesterday, that was the perfect performance in terms of being resilient. I think Derby this season are going to very much be backs against the walls, hit teams on the counter, try and nick a goal, and then just sort of defend for our lives after that, which we did perfectly yesterday. Admittedly, as good as Borough are, I didn't think they were at their peak yesterday. They didn't look as if they were that top six that top six team that everybody sort of touted them to be. I think we kept Lath quite quiet, and that sort of nullified their whole attack going forward. It just sort of left them with pot shots and shots from about 25 yards out. And I think we again defended resiliently, and I think that's going to be the way Derby sort of play this year. So opening day loss, I think it was sort of expected. I think we just sort of capitulated towards the end just because I think we had first match day nerves, and it was a welcome to the Championship baptism by fire. Yesterday was a lot more Derby-esque, I'd say, under Paul Warne. I think that's the sort of performance a Paul Warne side puts in, and I mean it's quite sweet for us because obviously with all the turmoil that we've had with Borough back in the day, with all the Mel Morris suing and Steve Gibson and all that, it was nice just to be our first championship win was against Borough at home. It was just nice to get the 3 points on the board. But I think home form for us this year is going to be very key in us trying to stay up.
Yeah, I was catching up with both your highlights, and yeah, I know Middlesbrough had a lot of shots, but yeah, from the highlights, they were mostly limited to outside the box, kind of comfortable-ish saves for your goalkeeper, wasn't it? So yeah, so moving on, Paul Warne. I wanted to speak to you about Paul Warne because obviously pre-season, I saw a bit of a clip doing the rounds pre-season where I don't think you had the best of pre-seasons, and the clip I saw was that the Derby fans were getting a bit frustrated, and there was a bit of kind of abuse being thrown towards him after one of the pre-seasons. Just how you feeling about Paul Warne? What's the kind of mood amongst the Derby fans? Is he the right guy? You feel obviously you promoted last season. How confident are you in him and his ability, going into this championship season to keep you up there?
Yeah, I mean, just regarding that clip, whoever did post that, actually, it was from Shrewsbury away in the league last season, and they sort of took it out of context. So it actually wasn't the pre-season game.
Okay, there you go.
So someone had a bit of fun with that one.
Did they?
But to be fair, Paul Warne is a divisive character at Derby. I mean, yes, he got us promoted. He's essentially what they call the League One Guardiola. He's got success every time he's been in League One. It's the case of when you're making that step up to the Championship, has he got that in him? Again, like I've already said, Derby fans are quite divisive. Paul Warne, it's a very much a 50-50 split in the sense that a lot of fans want to see him do well just purely because he's got us promoted back into the Championship. And I think for Paul Warne personally, I think he's got a point to prove. With Rotherham, I know he's took them up 3 times, but they've also gone down 3 times. But I think personally for him, I think he's got a point to prove in the sense that he believes he is a Championship manager, and I think he's earned the right to get there, but he should earn the right to stay there too. So from his personal point of view, I think he'll want to stay up. I quite like Paul Warne. I think he's a very honest man. He wears his heart on his sleeve. Okay, admittedly, the football isn't the best at times. It can be, they say, quite negative, but in my eyes, it's pragmatic football. I mean, I'd rather take points on the board rather than style of play at this moment in time. We have to remember Derby have gone from the depths of almost being non-existent to now still having a club being promoted back into the Championship. And I think we've got to have a bit of a realistic viewpoint in the sense that anything above the 3 relegation spots is success for us in this year. Stabilize ourselves in the Championship and then sort of kick on from there. So I think with the result from yesterday, I think a lot of people will get behind Paul Warne's sort of underdog mentality, and I think it'll do well for us this year because I don't think anyone's expecting us to do well. But again, he's a divisive character. It's very 50-50 split just purely because of the style of play. I mean, it isn't the best to watch, but however, if it gets results, I'm not going to be complaining if we stay up at the end of the season.
Yeah, that kind of moves quite nicely on to what I was going to ask you, Chadden, about Chris Wilder. You were obviously talking to me before we went live that you started the Sheffield United pod when Chris Wilder came in and started that kind of fantastic rise through the divisions. He obviously came in towards the end of last season. You were already pretty much nailed on for relegation, weren't you, by the time he came in? He's stayed in charge. Again, from the outside looking in, and what I've picked up on kind of social media and stuff is, there seems to be a bit of a split. Obviously, tell me if I'm wrong in terms of the Sheffield United fans. There's obviously there seems some who seem to think he's the right man, and that they're going to get behind him. They're going to mount a bit of a promotion challenge, but then there seems to be some who are saying he shouldn't have come back. Just what's your take on it?
I guess it's the reason it's split is he's such a club legend, the whole bringing us from the bottom of the third tier all the way to the Prem, that so on and so forth. And for that, I am internally grateful for. He did an incredible job. The reason he got appointed back as the manager is he has a buddy-buddy relationship with the Prince Abdullah. And at that point, we were so far adrift from anybody in the bottom of the Prem. There wasn't even a sniff of anybody else. And when we unfortunately sacked Heckingbottom, we him-hawed around and said, okay, the guy to get us back into the championship and bring us back to where our rightful spot, Chris Wilder. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. We're going to go through for the same tactics, the same, half-decent players. I will say going into this season, as you mentioned earlier, the window has brought in a bunch of quality. We've changed our formation. We're playing a back four. We're not playing a 3-5-2 that was so synonymous under Wilder in his first time in charge at United. But I'm almost wondering if this alleged takeover that's been going on for the last, seems like 5 years. I'm being a little facetious there. It was like the last year and a half. If it goes through, are the new ownership going to want to come in and bring a new manager with the new ideas and, almost freshen up the team, when they take over? I don't know. Only time will tell. Is Wilder good enough to keep us in this division and keep us in the fight for playoffs? Yes. He's shouted out through the media a few times that we do need more players. Now, whether he gets that request will only be told here the next 2 weeks until the window closes. So as you can tell, I'm not leaning either way. Whatever is the best to just get us to 7th place so we don't have to go to the playoffs, so we don't ever have to go up to the Premier League, that's just good enough for me. Is if we stay in the championship for the next 500 years or until I die, I'm okay with that. I never want to play in that godforsaken league above.
With the takeover then? Because again, I knew something was going on there. So is it kind of close happening? Because I saw something quite interesting. I can't remember when it was. I think it was just last week at some point where there was some suggestion that Sheffield United were kind of bringing in players that weren't necessarily kind of players that would, like you say, suit Chris Wilder and his system. And they were surprised at some of the kind of players that they were bringing in. Do you think, is this maybe, obviously I don't know who's calling the shots at Sheffield United in terms of players being brought in, but there's a bit of thinking there that maybe if the new owners come in, they kick out Wilder, someone's still got a talented, a squad available to him to try and push on in the championship. Yeah,
it's tough to say. Clearly the United States consortium, because that's the only time you hear consortium is when somebody's trying to buy a football team, is consortium. So it's apparently a United States consortium. As much as I know. They're keeping that hush-hush. But I think they are kind of calling the shots. I guess it's in the final stages of the EFL process for whatever, takeover, ownership test the EFL makes you run. I just hope we don't get in a similar situation like Mel Morris at Derby. God, no one wants to see that ever happen again. But if they are coming in, rumors are their inevitability is they want to get us back into the Prem sooner rather than later, and they want us to establish ourselves in the Premiership. So I think that there's been some players that we've missed out on that I think Wilder has wanted, but the consortium that's taking us over has not wanted. So, and there's some players that we've brought in that as you mentioned, don't really fit Wilder's style. So I think they are calling the shots to a certain point. But yeah, it's really weird, and I'm hoping it gets done because I just want it to get done. Because if Prince Abdullah is not going to spend any more money to bring in any more quality players or a little bit of added squad depth, let's get somebody through the door that hopefully will and doesn't, mismanage us and run us into the ground.
Yeah, well, that kind of moves nicely on to the next question I was going to ask you guys, and I'll come back to you, Vic, on this one then. Yeah, like Chad said, we've probably got just under 2 weeks of the transfer window left, and yeah, I think the vast majority of Championship teams, and their fan bases are hoping there's plenty more business to be done. How about Derby then? Because I was having a look earlier at some of your, some of the guys you've brought in, and yeah, again, I was a bit surprised to see how many guys that you've brought in so far in this transfer window. How are you feeling about, additions that are still needed? Kind of what how are you feeling about, is that going to happen? Are you feeling confident? You are going to bring those players in. Yeah, what's your take on the current kind of transfer status at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to talk about the Championship in general, I think nearly every team is lacking squad depth, and I think it's a lot to do with maybe financial fair play, or just teams don't have the money to spend anymore. And I think there's a lot of sort of profit and sustainability rules going on. So that's probably the reason why the transfer window has been so slow. In terms of Derby, I still think we're probably about 4 or 5 players short. Again, we've got the same issue that sort of every other team in the league has, and it is the squad depth. There's a couple of positions that we really sort of need to target, especially looking more to our number 9. We don't have a recognised number 9 at the club just yet. I mean, we have signed Jerry Yates on loan, who I think will be a decent signing at this level. But beyond that, we're looking at James Collins, who again at League One was pretty decent. At Championship level, I don't know if he'll cut the mustard. We're looking at maybe trying to improve our left back situation. So we've got Callum Elder there, but I think we still probably need someone better than him. And we've just recently signed a new goalkeeper in Zetterstrom. And I think what Derby have done this season quite well is sort of looked at the foreign markets and looked at maybe the cheaper gems. And I think that's probably the model of the way Championship clubs will probably do their business going forward. I think the British market's too inflated now. If you're looking at trying to strengthen in those positions, you're looking at paying 5-6 million for players that probably aren't even worth that. So the foreign markets we've sort of exploited really well. I still think we're probably about 4 players short, in all honesty. Our starting 11's decent, but like I said, it's got to be the Paul Warne sort of style of play. We've got to look for those players that are going to work hard, they're going to be energetic, they're going to be athletic, as he likes to say. So yeah, I think we're probably about 3 or 4 players short. I reckon we'll get it done, probably at least 2. But I think we're looking more towards the loan market now rather than permanent. I just think that, again, with the competitive nature of the Championship and the way the transfer market has gone this year, I think loan deals are probably what's going to be a lot of Championship clubs saving grace this year.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. I think, like you just touched on then, loan deals are just so important nowadays. Championship teams, aren't they? And the vast majority of them seem to be done, obviously, in the latter stages of the season when those bigger clubs have finally made a decision as to whether they're going to kind of keep hold of those kind of younger players or whether they're going to send them out on loan. I think you make a great point as well about the kind of international recruitment seems to have kind of stepped up a notch, I think, in the last couple of seasons. There's obviously always been players brought in from the continent, but I think you make a good point in that, I don't know what it is, but the kind of UK kind of homegrown based players, Championship teams are just getting priced out of them either with transfer fees or, if they're a free agent, and then the salaries that are asking, and then seem to be kind of looking in these, I don't want to say more obscure, but kind of Scandinavian leagues and some of the kind of lesser European leagues. There seems to be more Championship teams definitely kind of following that suit, doesn't there? And plucking these guys out of there who most of us have never heard of, but hoping to find some gems. So yeah, West Brom, we seem to be taking a similar approach this year. We've made 2 or 3 signs who I'd never even heard the guys brought in from Scandinavia, and brought in a chap from the Austrian division who, they look good enough to compete and play well in the Championship. So it sounds like Derby are taking a kind of similar approach. You mentioned that goalkeeper because you spent a bit of money on that new goalkeeper you brought in, didn't you?
Yeah, so we spent about 1.4 million. I think the fee was believed on Zetterstrom, who, from what we've spoken to people at Djurgården and a lot of other people who sort of watched his career progress, are saying that he's probably the next big thing coming out of the Scandinavian leagues, which is promising to hear. I mean, he's 26 years old. He's 6'6", so he could probably touch the bar without having to jump. But there's a lot of promise behind that signing, and I think what's also key about signing players like that is sort of their potential resale value. So if he has a good season or two, again in an overinflated British market, for the good players, they tend to pay 10-20 million for players like that. So again, it's a win-win deal for us, but we needed a new number 1 anyway. I think we've got Josh Vickers at the club, but he's not necessarily what we'd class as a number 1. Zetterstrom's going to come in, hopefully put the performances that he has been putting in for Djurgården, because they've just I think they've got 1 more qualifier left in the Europa Conference League, so he's got that European experience too, playing in front of big crowds. But yeah, I think the foreign market, I think, is going to be something that a lot of clubs, not even in just the Championship, even the Premier League, are going to sort of exploit, because like we said already, you've got a British player who has a bit of talent, tends to go for ridiculous amounts of money. For example, like you guys said, you signed Lewis Dobbin. We had Lewis Dobbin at Derby during League One, and we didn't think he was all that. And he's gone for, was it 10-15 million to Villa?
That's right. Yeah,
No.
He was one of those deals with all that kind of financial fair play little, wasn't it? He was involved in all that little kind of exploiting and so on. But he hasn't had many minutes for us yet. But from what I've read, his kind of opinion seems to be split on him as to whether there's a player in there or not. So interesting to see how he does for us. Chad, I'll come to you then. Like, I think we said this earlier, and Vic's probably in agreement with me. Some of the guys you've signed already, like I said, I know you're saying you're still kind of lacking squad depth. You've lost a lot of players in the window, but some of the guys you brought in, like, you're the envy of many, I think, and you've probably done the opposite of what we've been talking about there. You've brought in, guys a couple of really good free agent signings, the likes of O'Hare and Campbell. These guys who are kind of, straight away that they're capable of performing at this level. And then you've got guys like some really promising youngsters, Burrows, Cooper, who you brought in from Plymouth, the goalkeeper, Sam McCullum from Norwich, but you seem to think, you need, well, I'll let you delve into it. You seem to think you need a fair few more then to be competing at the top 2.
Yeah, I think we need 7 or 8 more. And that's eye-opening to a lot of people. But like I said earlier, if Kiefer Moore, isn't having the best game for himself, and, we look to Rian Brewster and you're like, he is god-awful, that's what we're going to have to rely on as a striker. I would like another striker with a little bit of championship experience. Maybe Tyrese Campbell is that. We just need some depth basically all over. We did get Cooper in, so he's going to be our number 1 from Plymouth. The defense, Suter is good cover. If Anel Ahmedhodzic goes, which I'm hoping he does because I lost all faith in him last season, hopefully he comes at a price of about 15, anywhere to 10 to 15. I'd take that. We could reinvest in some better defenders. Harry Suter could step in there. Obviously, why we brought him in from Leicester. And then just cover in the midfield. If anybody in the midfield gets hurt, you're going to have an inexperienced midfield that's going to make mistakes, be susceptible to being opened up in at the drop of a hat, and you find yourself in trouble. So if we can get that, and I will agree with Vic, he did say, I mean, I was going to, he took my point. I was going to make it known that everybody is going on the continent to try and get players that are not well known, and for a discounted rate, and maybe taking a chance. And we've already used one of our loans with Raksaki from Crystal Palace. Matt and Gilchrist from Chelsea. Something about Chris Wilder, I don't know what it is, but managers in the Prem tend to like to loan their half decent players to us. So if you looked at James McAtee over the last 2 seasons, obviously Tommy Doyle before that, Morgan Gibbs White, who I coined the law firm a few years back, all on loans. Our loan department got it right. Our scouting department did get it right on some of these players over the past couple of seasons. So I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket on the loans and hoping we get them right. But I think that's probably where we're gonna go. We're not gonna have much money unless a couple more go out the door to make any. But like Callum O'Hare came in on a free. Kiefer Moore, I think he's like 1 or 2 million. Burrows, obviously, we paid for him. Tyrese Campbell, as you spoke about, on another free. So we're splashing a little bit of cash, and I mean, but not anything too crazy because, as I said, the Prince is broke. So I think we're gonna have to use that with the outgoings to strengthen the squad if that happens in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, you touch on obviously Gilchrist and Raksaki. I know there was I think most of the championship was interested in bringing those two guys in, on loan. It'd be interesting to see how those guys develop. Because, like you said, you've had some good success with some youngsters who have come in, and they've performed really well for you, haven't they, over the last few seasons? So yeah, look, guys, and I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I always like to, the guests that have come on so far, I've been asking them to give me a bit of a key player. I know there's obviously a couple of weeks left of the transfer window, so, there's still guys to come in. But as of this moment in time, I've been asking the guests, who's a key player, who you think is going to be your most important player over the course of the season, but also a one to watch, one that, maybe a youngster who's coming through, maybe, player that people aren't too kind of, aware of, who you think maybe kind of make a bit of a name for themselves over the course of the season. So, yeah, I'll come back to you then, Vic. Star player then, who do you think is going to be your key man this season for Derby? And then, one for us kind of fans outside to keep an eye on.
I think for Derby, I'm kind of hoping we sign number 9 and Derby our star player. But if I go on the current squad, I'd probably say there's a couple. So Mendes Lang, I think he was a very key part in us getting promoted last season with over 25 goal contributions, and I think he'll sort of continue his good form into this season. I think with the pace he's got, the direct play that he's got, he frightens fullbacks. He frightened him at League One. I think he'll frighten him in the Championship. I think he's probably our star player.
Big guy, isn't he? He's an absolute unit.
He's got no neck, as we like to say. But he's a big unit. I think he'll be one of our star players. He's also been named club captain this season as well, so he's got a bit more of responsibility this year. So I think he'll be a star player. One to watch. He's actually a loan player that we've had from Crystal Palace. I think David Ozo. Now, David Ozo oozes class. I think he plays beyond his years. He's only 19 years of age, but he plays in that defensive midfield role. And he sort of reminds me of Lukaku when he signed for West Brom, in the sense that he was just a big unit who has so much potential and so much that he can offer. He played really well against Middlesbrough yesterday, but we've been really impressed with him over pre-season. So I think one to watch would be David Ozo. I think he's going to have a superb season at Derby, and I think we'll probably really see his career kick on from here when he goes back to Palace.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, because I saw that you'd brought him in, but I'll be honest, he's not a player I've heard of. So you're saying, a lot of raw potential there. You just got to try and get it out of him a bit this season.
I think he'll shine this year. I think at Palace is probably, when I spoke to a couple of Palace fans, they were saying he's probably one of the best sort of academy products that they've produced, and you can sort of see why. I think giving him that year in the Championship, I think will develop his maturity. I think he'll develop his game quite a lot. But you can already see the sort of key qualities he's got. He's a very physical player. He's very strong. He's very good on the ball for someone of his physicality. Can take players on if he needs to, but he does the basics right in that defensive midfield role. But he's also pretty decent going forward. I think there was a segment when he charged at Blackburn's defence in the first game, and nobody could get the ball off him. And if he's doing that from defensive midfield, imagine what he could do playing a little bit further forward. So David Ozo is definitely a player to watch, and I think we're really going to see his career kick on this season and beyond.
Brilliant. I'll come to you then, Chad. The same question: who do you think is going to be your key man for Sheffield United this season, and who's maybe one for us to kind of keep an eye on?
I could say the same player, but I'll split it up. The player that I want that's probably going to be our star, and you saw him. He's 2 for 2 in league games this year. Is Gus Hamer. I mean, I could easily say his Coventry counterpart, Callum O'Hare, but I think Gus Hamer, off of the back of the season last season, not having the best season in the Prem, but never playing in the Prem. So what did you expect? He kind of grew and matured through the season as it grew on, and really you didn't really see him have too bad of a game, considering in that side you're like, how the heck did he not have a bad game? And he's already 2 for 2 in both of our games that we've played in the season. So I think Gus Hamer is going to be our best, brightest player. One that not really many people know about, Ollie Arblaster, an academy product, captained Sheff United last year in the Prem, one of the youngest captains in United history in a long, long time. He opened his account against Preston, albeit a deflected goal. It probably wasn't going to, if it didn't deflect, it didn't go in. But he already looks like a good player for Sheffield United, and it's a shame that if he continues to grow and get better, and his name is going to, elevate as his game does, in the end of the season, if we don't get promoted, there's going to be a lot of big teams in the division above circling the wagon for Arblaster and wanting to go at hopefully a premium price. Albeit I want to got both my fingers crossed that if he does have a spectacular season, we'll be able to hold on to him, and we'll shoo off anybody that comes around and saying he's ours.
Yeah, he wasn't a player. I've not seen much of him last season, but then I watched your opening game of the season against Preston. Obviously, he got the goal, but I was really impressed with him. And he was, like I said, he was not a guy I was really too much aware of, but he was really well he played really well in the middle of the park, controlling the game, kind of sitting deep, picking the ball up. So I was really impressed with him. Yeah, and Gustavo Hamer, I was a big fan of his when he was at Coventry, but he seems to have, just from the 2 games so far this season, he seems to have got more of an attacking side to his game than when he was at Coventry. He seemed to sit a little bit deeper, primarily like a kind of defensive midfielder. I know he did pop up with a few goals, but he seems like he's added to his attacking game, and Wilder's allowing him to kind of push forward and get into the final third as much as possible. Yeah,
for sure. And if you did happen to see it, it's crazy because you can compare. I mean, I said Hamer didn't have a bad season last year, but the perfect example is the goal against Preston. If that's in the Premier League, he puts that in row Z, and somebody's got to go chase it and get it. And it might go over the roof of the stadium and go into the car park, and somebody's got to get it. Now, with a preseason, building his confidence up, getting it up a little bit, that goal was taken well against Preston, where the keeper just chips it right to him. He just chips it right back over him. I was like, that is the Gus Hamer. We saw bright spots of that last year in the Prem, but in a team that only got 16 points, I mean, there's only so much you can do. And then the goal yesterday against QPR, I mean, it was a well-taken goal. So it is a player that is playing with full of confidence. So, I mean, only the sky's the limit. Now, hopefully, if he gets some help from a supporting cast around, we can mount some sort of a charge, but not in the playoffs. I just want to finish 7th, so we don't have to worry about.
Well, this is my last question. I'm going to move on to my last question for you guys. Again, I've been asking everybody this who's come on, and it's tough for you guys because obviously we've still got 2 weeks of the transfer window to go. But I've obviously been asking for a bit of a prediction. Where do you think you finish, so we can kind of come back on it later on in the season and kind of laugh at our predictions. But yeah, Vic, I'll come back to you then, mate. I can only assume you know survival, you know, is the expectation. But yeah, you jump in. What's your expectation? Do you think you can achieve it?
Yeah, like you said, we expect survival to be the main aim. Most fans will probably take anywhere above 21st. Me personally, I think we'll probably have a better season than most are expecting. I think we'll finish comfortable mid-table. Like I said on our own podcast, I reckon we'll finish anywhere between 14th and possibly 11th. I think we'll have a decent season, maybe pushing towards that sort of top half, the top 12. But I think we'll probably finish anywhere between 11th and 14th. I think we'll have more than enough to sort of stay up. And I think the way we play, especially with our counter attack and how much pace we've got going forward, I think we'll surprise a few teams in this division. So, yeah, I think so. We'll take anywhere above 21st, but my own personal view is I think we'll finish anywhere between 11th and 14th.
Interesting. Yeah, I had you guys to stay up, but I didn't think, you know, again, obviously this is just looking in, you know, didn't have you to finish that by. I think, you know, that would be a tremendous season, wouldn't it? If you guys can finish kind of around that 12th, 13th, 14th place. I think, yeah, Paul Wall's done a tremendous job, hasn't he? If he can pull that off. So, yeah, great. Chad, and to yourself then, Sheffield United, I know you've been you've been telling us throughout about, you know, and obviously not wanting to get back in the Premier League, but surely, you know, that is the target here this season.
Okay, from my perspective, if we don't add to this side, and this is just my view, I think we finish anywhere between 8th to 12th. I think we're going to screw around and find ourselves in the playoffs. If you were to ask anybody else, I think if you're being a realist, we probably come 5th or 6th. But if they do catch a win, the takeover happens, investment comes in January, you could see a real push for automatics. But like I said earlier, I don't want to be anywhere near the playoffs. I just want to spend the rest of my life in this division and be happy with finishing 7th to 18th, 19th every year. Maybe go to the playoffs, lose in the first round. You know, nothing too fancy.
I think I had you for the playoffs when I made some predictions about a week or so ago. I think there's definitely a couple of stronger teams in there, but yeah, I think I had you for about third or fourth place. I think I went Sheffield United. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting to get your take because I think most fans watching this would maybe have been expecting a bit more of a different take. So yeah, intrigued to obviously get a detailed look at what's going on behind the scenes at Sheffield United and the fact you are quite still short in squad depth. But look, guys, I'm going to leave it there. It's been absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for obviously coming on and joining me. It's been great chatting to you guys. I've been asking all the guests as well. Obviously, season's just kicked off, but it'd be great if we can get you guys back on at some point. Into the season, when there's been plenty of games played and, we're getting a better look at things. And, we all know what's, squads and players that, we're working with, etc. So, that'll be great. So, thank you very much. And, guys, obviously I've seen a few of you have been tuning in live. So thank you very much for tuning in. Obviously, this is going to be, going up onto the YouTube page, straight away for people to view. So if you catch it on there, thank you very much as well. Socials have been going up on the screen below as well. So if you can kind of jump on those and like, that'll be absolutely fantastic. It does us the whole world of good. But until then, guys, good night. And I'll catch you for the next championship episode in a week or so, I'm thinking. So, thank you very much, guys. And this is why I always mess up with the outro bit. Just bear with me. And we're gone.